So, hello everyone. Happy New Year. I hope that you had a lot of good holiday cheer. And I want to express my wishes for continued holiday cheer going into the new year. Everybody's going to make their resolutions, and probably most of us are not going to keep them. I'm included in that. But I do want to offer one resolution that I would like for you to seriously consider. This is a serious matter. And I want to do it in the form of my story, in hopes that you can get something out of my story that could possibly help you or a loved one. And it has to do with my fighting with cancer. Now, I'm going to give you my whole story as much as I can remember of it, which is, I've got some detailed information here. But there's some things that I want to cover that you may not have heard before in terms of this whole prostate issue. So I want to get into that, and hopefully it will touch you in a way that will move you. If you are a black man over 40 years old, it will move you to do something. It will motivate you to go to your doctor and get a PSA test. If you're not a black man, then hopefully it will move you to talk to your relative, your male relative, white or black or whatever the case might be, in hopes that it will motivate them. So I've taken some notes here because I want to give as much detailed information as possible. And this information is my personal information about my journey with this whole issue of prostate cancer. Back in 2013, up to 2013, I was getting regular checkups. I was with a primary care doctor and a system whereby they would remind me every year or every so often that I needed to have certain tests done. So it was my time to have my PSA test done, and this was in October of 2013. I went and had a PSA test done. So as a matter of reference, the normal range for a PSA test is 0.006 on the low end to a 4 on the high end. So that's 0.006 on the low end and 4 on the high end. So at October of 2013, I was at a 3.44, which is obviously in the normal range. Now on that same year, in December, I went back and had another PSA test done, and I was at 4.52. So just within a few months, I went from being in the normal range to beyond the normal range. But because I'm a black man and I was over 40 years old even in 2013, I was told not to be too worried about it because black men will range high in a lot of cases. And in case you don't know this or not, the statistics will tell you that 3 out of 10 African Americans, men over the age of 40 years old, are going to get prostate cancer. Now let me just try to put that in kitchen table terms. If you're a black man and you're over 40 years old, what I'd like for you to do is make a list with yourself being number 1 on the list. And then write down 9 of your black friends over 40 years old. And that list will tell you that by statistics, according to statistics, 3 out of those 9 are going to get prostate cancer. And as a result of that, 2 out of those 3 are going to die from prostate cancer. You just don't know which 3 it's going to be or which 2 it's going to be. But hopefully that will resonate with you and make you want to do something about it. So my urge here is that you go get a PSA test, and you get it as soon as possible. Even if you've had one done in the past, if it's been a year, it's time for you to go get another one, as hopefully when you hear my story, you'll see what I'm talking about. So in December of 2013, I had a above normal PSA test, but my doctors were telling me, don't worry about it. You just stay on it. If you're not feeling any symptoms like blood in the urine or any swelling or any cramping behind your thighs on your lower back, if you're not having any of those symptoms, don't worry about it. Everything will be cool. They were saying that even if you did have cancer, it was a slow growth cancer and you probably die from something else, don't sweat it. So I'm here to tell you right now, as a person who has dealt with cancer, that's bullshit. So I'm going to tell you straight up, without any sugarcoating, that's bullshit. So I didn't worry about it, and based upon the warm fuzzy that the doctors was giving me at that time, I just went on with my life. And historically, up until that time, I would get a notification via email when it was time for me to have a PSA test or whatever the case might be. So years, literally years went by, and I was not getting the notifications, so I didn't worry about it. That's on me. That's my fault. I should have been more proactive and concerned about it, but I wasn't. So I'm not blaming the doctors. It's just that I was put in a place mentally that I didn't think I needed to worry about it. Okay, I want to fast forward to February of 2018. It's 5 years later. I hadn't had a PSA test done since that December PSA test in 2013. So here we go, 2018, 5 years later. In February, I'm going to the doctor because I hadn't had a cholesterol test in a bunch of months, primarily. So just out of a whim, I told the doc, I said, listen, I want to have a cholesterol test done, but while you're doing that, while you're drawing blood, let's go on and get a PSA test done. So I said it in a matter-of-fact kind of way, not even concerned, just another checkbox that I wanted to check off my list. So we drew the blood for a PSA test on our cholesterol, got the results back in February of 2018. Now remember, in December of 2013, I was high, but I was at high being told that not to worry about it. So in February of 2018, my PSA test came back at 6.67. That is out of normal range. However, the doctors were telling me, hey, you're African American, you're over 40 years old, don't sweat it. We don't usually get excited, or we don't usually get worried unless the PSA test is a 9 or more. So you're not there, so we're not going to worry about it at this point. We are going to be concerned to the extent to where we want you to come back in 6 months and just take another test and see what's happening at that time. Well, 6 months would be in August of 2018. I did go back in August of 2018, had another PSA test done, and just as a frame of reference here, remember the normal range is 0.006 up to a 4. That's the range. And in February, I was at a 6.67. Now here it is in August, 6 months later, I'm at a 19 point something, 19. So I'm way the hell out of anything that could be considered normal or in any type of an alarm range. The alarm at that time was to let's get you to a urologist as quickly as possible and go to the next series of tests to see what's going on with you. So I went to the urologist. They did some exams and took another blood test to confirm or reconfirm the results of the previous blood test, which it was, confirmed. So then you go back to the results of the doctor, and it's a female urologist, by the way. And she says, listen, I'm not going to cut to the chase here. You have cancer. I mean, she said it in a manner, she was sincere. Don't get me wrong. She was sincere, but she wasn't trying to sugarcoat it because this is some serious stuff here. It ain't time for play acting. So she said, yeah, you have cancer. So we need to, do what we need to do to try to see if we can figure out what's going on. The type of cancer that I had is called prostate-specific carcinoma. And what she suspected at that time was that the cancer was contained within my prostate, but we needed to confirm that via additional tests, meaning CAT scan and an MRI, which I had those done. Thankfully for me, the results were that the cancer was contained within my prostate. So going back as a follow-up meeting with the doctor, she said you have 3 choices. One is to do nothing, which is essentially suicide. Second thing is we can treat this with radiation. The third thing is that you can have your prostate removed. Most men opt for either option number 2 or option number 3. The difference between those two, option number 2, where you have radiation treatment, it is possible that through radiation treatment that the cancer can be eliminated or greatly reduced, and the prostate will still function. What does that mean in layman's terms? It means that the man can still have sex. Obviously, if you opt for option number 3, you're not going to be able to have sex in the way that in the normal way that you would think of conventionally having sex. Big difference. Ego plays a big part in terms of which option most men will take. In my case, the type of cancer that I had, the doctor explained to me that this is an aggressive cancer. If it is allowed to persist outside of the prostate, or if it gets into the ductal area, kidneys, so on and so forth, it is aggressive, meaning that it could do some really bad stuff fairly quickly. She gave me a window of 3 months to make up my mind. My wife and I looked at each other while we sitting there in the office, and we kind of laughed at each other, talking about, what the hell, we don't need 3 months. We don't need, we need less than a second. Let's get this stuff out of me. I mean, I don't want to deal with even the possibility of even fighting it with radiation. At that point, sex, having sex or not having sex was totally off the table. It was about surviving, like living. So we opted for option number 3, which was to have my prostate removed. So this conversation happened in August of 2018. I had my surgery. We had to get me to a surgeon who would literally do the operation, the surgery. And the doctor, fortunately, I had a young doctor who was up on the most modern technologies. He was very adept in the laparoscopic surgery. He had done over 500 surgeries. So I was pretty confident in his ability. He told me that the survival rate after a complete prostatectomy was, for the first 10 years, was 98%, and for 15 years out it was 95%, and for 20 years out it was somewhere in the area about 93%, something like that. So I felt very comfortable in that knowledge and his experience. I was comfortable in what was going to happen because I have a strong belief in God, and I knew that God was going to get me through this one way or the other. And I also have a strong belief in my wife, who is one hell of a strong woman. And I knew that she was going to be able to take care of me if, you know, my aftercare was going to be some things that I couldn't do for myself. And it is. Aftercare is something that you have to have someone to help you with. So all of those things were on the table for me. But I want to go beyond that, because I want to talk about, after you hear the diagnosis and it's confirmed, the mental things that you go through can put you in a funky place if you're not strong spiritually and otherwise. Because I wasn't too concerned. Very little of the concern went toward me, whether I was going to live or die, to be quite honest with you. I was concerned about my wife, and I was concerned about my children and my grandchildren. I was way, 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 way more concerned about them than I was about myself. So it is that period where you know that you now have cancer, and now you are waiting for the surgery to happen so that you can get rid of that cancer. It's that period right there. That's a toughie. So here's what I'm saying to you. Get a PSA test done. Get it done as soon as possible. If you're a black man, 40 years old or older, if you're a man, period, you need to get it done. But especially if you're a black man, 40 years old or older, don't wait. And for the ladies, you should nag the hell out of your man in your life to make sure that he does go, in fact, and get that PSA test done. You need to get it done, obviously, to see if you have cancer, but you also need to get it done so that you can establish a baseline. If you recall, I told you where I was in October of 2013, December of 2013, and then moving forward to 2018. So it was a baseline, and the baseline obviously started curving up at a rather steep rate. But if you can monitor that, even if you had a PSA test done once a year, you can see where you may need to start taking some more proactive action in terms of trying to make sure that you are a healthy person. A couple more points that I want to make here. Try not to make this video too long, but this is important stuff, and I don't want to skip too much of it. What I have seen since I got in this whole thing, this issue with cancer, is I started recalling the number of men that I've known within my very small circle who have been affected by this prostate cancer thing. And I got to tell you, man, I'm talking about men that I've known on a first name basis for years, whether it was a colleague, a professional colleague, or someone that I grew up with. I can name 10 people, first name basis, that I was on a first name basis with, that have died from this. So get a PSA test done. It's all it is a blood test. I can recall one gentleman. He knew that he had cancer. He wasn't feeling well, and he knew that he had cancer, but he didn't tell his wife. They have this these laws now, these privacy laws now, where you don't even have to share medical information with your own wife if you don't want to. Well, he was a macho guy, and he went to the doctor and found out that he had cancer. His wife knew that something was wrong with it. She didn't know what. So it got to the point when he started to have, he was at stage 4, which meant that the cancer had gone outside of his prostate. And when he had to go start taking radiation treatments, well, obviously his wife found out that at that time, but the cancer had progressed to the point to where it wasn't much that they could do for him. So here it is, a wife that's been living with this man all these years. She sees that he's got some back problems and stuff like that, but she doesn't know what's wrong. So now she's in a mind state of, something's wrong with my husband, and I don't know what it is, and he won't tell me. She goes from that to, my husband is taking radiation for stage 4 cancer. Can you see where this is going, man? That's why it is so important. Get a freaking PSA test done. All it is a blood test, and go from there and establish a baseline. Since I've had my operation, I had my operation in November 20th of 2018, day before Thanksgiving. I had the operation on the 20th of November 2018, and at 3:30 on the 21st of November, the very next day, Thanksgiving Day, I was released from the hospital. The surgery itself took about 2 hours, and I just needed to recover from the drugs overnight, and I was able to, well, I walked out of the hospital, but you know, they're going to put you in a wheelchair to get you to your vehicle, but I walked out and got in the wheelchair and then went on about my business. The recovery takes, you know, about 8 weeks. Obviously, you've had an organ removed, so there's some things you got to get through, you know, get through with that. But not at any time did I have any pain. Even back from 2018, there was no pain. There was no symptoms of any kind. It was just a normal, regular blood test that I was going first for cholesterol, and I just, oh, by the way, added the PSA part onto it. So here it is. It's been over a year now that I've had the operation. Every 3 months I go for a blood test, and again, I reference the normal range, which starts at 0.006. Now, every 3 months I go get a blood test, and my PSA test is less than 0.006. So I'm good to go. The doctor's telling me I shouldn't worry about it, but I've decided that I want to have a blood test every 3 months just to make sure that I stay on top of things. So my final words to you is, if you're a black man over 40, get up off your ass and go get a PSA test done. If you're a female, get up off your ass and nag the hell out of that man to make sure that he goes and gets that PSA test done and shares the results of that information with you, so that you can champion him, so you can stand by him the way that I know you can. I want you to have a good 2020, and this is the way to get started.